the thing that I really appreciate about this phase of my life where I'm really learning about different subjects is, it's the old cliche, but the more I know, the more I realize
I don't know
I don't
anything.
know shit.
I know it's so insane.
I'm fucking dumb.
Yeah, yeah. I realized like how dumb am I because I thought I was so smart.
Yeah.
You know, so you tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
There we go. It just started.
All right.
So, Rodrigo, thank you so much, man, for being on the show. We've known each other for a few years, I'd say, but kind of on and off. You know, you're super busy doing all this stuff, but I know this sounds a bit awkward, but I've been watching you.
Whoa.
And I just locked the door. You now you can't leave.
Yeah.
But I've been watching, and it's just amazing all the stuff that you've done and how you've grown. I think in the real estate world over the years, from just being, as an investor, kind of being intrigued by it, really building, and then now seeing where you are today, and just quick conversations like we were having in the kitchen just now, and it's an amazing story. And I thought, I think it would. When I wanted you on the show, I was like, I want to hear how all this started because not everyone can visualize, things in such a big picture when they're starting, or maybe feel a little lost in the real estate world. And I love the story. Great guy. We always had a good laugh every time we spoke. So I'm really happy you're on the show, and I'm really looking forward to really getting to know the story behind Rodrigo, man.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the invitation. And yeah, I wasn't too creeped out by that comment about watching me, so it's all good, man. We're moving on from that.
But I just moved back. Just a little.
So yeah, thanks for the invitation. So yeah, but a bit about the story and how I got to where I am right now.
Well, where are you right now? How about
That's
that?
that's a good question. Even I'm not too sure. So I'm Rodrigo Parada. I'm a real estate investor. I'm also a real estate coach. So I teach Canadians through another coaching program. I have 25 students right now on how to
Amazing.
buy multifamily assets.
Okay.
Yes, been doing that for over a year.
Okay.
And I started investing in real estate in 2018 in Quebec. Started buying with my brothers, my dad, and my wife. Our first acquisition was in Sainte Thérèse, and we just kept on going since then. So initially, what ended up happening, and I think we met at that time, when I joined this Canadian group of investors,
Yeah.
I got slowly but surely exposed to different realities, different markets, and not just at the province level, but across the country, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of confirmed to me that there's a different way of doing things.
Oh my God. Just okay. What's your background again? I know it's Latino, but what kind of Latino? What's
My dad is from Chile and my mom is from El Salvador.
okay.
They actually met in Montreal at the Salsatec,
Oh, it's awesome.
right? Like, so I'm like hyper Latino cliche from Montreal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big time. And when it's funny because were your parents, when you started talking to them about investing in real estate, I know whenever I speak with my parents about it, Italian background, it's like 20% down, pay it down as fast as possible, no debt, no, don't ever do anything like that. And then, funny enough, like you kind of start just having conversations with people that do have huge portfolios. And it was like, wow, there's a different story to this.
Yep.
It's a very different story than that immigrant story of how you buy properties, let's say. Was that kind of like a clash at the beginning?
100%. It still
Okay.
is today. That didn't change. But it's also, and to your point, there's a different cultural background from that generation where they had to do everything themselves.
Yeah.
They didn't have access to the tools and the resources that we now have.
And the knowledge.
Exactly. So it created a different type of struggle,
Yeah.
right? But I think that our generation and how we're doing things is that we go after the knowledge, we go after the resources, and then we figure out how to implement it, right?
Yep.
And the beauty about where we live, as opposed to where they came from, my parents and a
Yep.
lot of the immigrant kids that grew up here is there's so many opportunities out there, and it's really you're always going to be your own barrier in what you actually can achieve because like I've always been saying this thing, and just recently I've been comfortable sharing it. But this saying, like, having a piece of the pie. Like, I think that's fucking bullshit because it comes from a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Like, why are we focused on the piece of the pie when there's actually literally like a kitchen out there that we can eat out of?
Yeah.
Right?
But it's such a different mindset because, and you know, when I think about it, I understand that mindset because they had a scarcity life. Like when I think of it, like for them, it was like always, you know, they went through that 18% interest rates. I mean, then there was just coming, you know, to another country, brand new with nothing but luggages, you know. So the concept of it, like living eight, like my family, we were like 10 people in a three and a half, you know, when they first came. So I understand where it comes from, but they never let go of it either, even when the opportunities came. So I find for us, we're like sometimes I have a hard time relating to it
Yep.
because you're like, but it's not that for us now. Like we're not living in that same moment. We're lucky enough that we're not.
Yep.
So you know that scarcity mindset is something that is helpful, I think, at the beginning, but then at a certain point, it's hurtful. Like it stops you from progressing.
Yeah. And, continuing on your point, like a lot of us have the same story in our family. Like I'll take an example from my grandfather, and I only recently like realized this, but my grandfather was a civil engineer that built highways in El Salvador and in Africa.
Okay.
And he went to Europe, to Paris. My mom went to
That's pretty big, dude, for back
yeah,
then.
like he was working for the UN, right? But when they immigrated to Canada, he had to take a job as a janitor.
But think of how fucked up that is. Like when we stop and ponder for a second and say, like, imagine what we do. Like you work all this stuff, and then you've been doing this for 40 years or whatever, 30 years, and then you go to another place and you have to do a job that has nothing to do with what you studied. How how much of a mind fuck is that? Like how was your grandfather after that?
He was always super chill.
Oh, that's
But
that's so
but
crazy.
like I think that, and that's kind of like the pondering and like the introspection that I'm now facing is you end up realizing of where you're coming from, right? You're always going to know where you come from to know where you're going.
Yeah.
And that to me is a prime example of, at the end of the day, complaining or being upset about stuff doesn't really change anything. You really just got to act,
Yeah.
right? And there's a bit of stoicism in there. So maybe my grandfather, because I won't be able to have these conversations with him, right? He's
Yeah.
not here anymore. But I don't know if it was just out of necessity or it was a conscious thing. Like he was someone who studied all his life, but I don't know what it was, man. But it just is. So
Yeah.
again, going back to your point of like what they had to go through and what we're going through, totally different because we're not playing. We're in the same game, but it's a different set of rules,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So yeah, it's a challenging thought actually.
But it's funny because when you think of all these things, you know, sometimes whenever I'm in a shitty state and I think of, you know, like I kind of go back and say, man, I wonder how tough it must have been that. And I'm like, okay, this is not so tough. You know, it's like when you really do the comparable of
Yeah.
it, you know, sometimes and you know, some people, oh yeah, but it's not the same. Yeah, but sometimes you have to do that to realize like it's not so bad, but what we're dealing with on our end for certain things, for
Yeah.
sure. But you know, going back to what you were saying about investing and you know with your family, when you bought that first one in 2018, it was in Saint Therese.
Yeah.
How is that process doing it as a family? Like as that first acquisition, was that a tough thing to get the family to want to do something like this together?
No, it wasn't tough. It wasn't tough in itself. It's just if you're asking me now if I did it the right way or it was the optimal way,
The right way is never going to happen on your first time. That's
that's what I'm
guaranteed.
saying. No, I think that, and also it has to do with the culture. Is that this whole idea of me pushing for that came from being at a family dinner a few years before, and then having everybody around the table, and just having the thought that I don't want to be the only one that is doing well when we're older, right? So I started educating myself about how to do these acquisitions and eventually just started pitching to my family. And that's how it started. Like I'm doing this for a living now. I'm pitching deals, but I pitched the deal to my family and they bought in and then we did it, right?
Why real estate?
Because,
So many other options, right? But why? What was it about real estate that made you
well,
say?
at that time, I had tried different things before,
Okay.
and I was there.
So what
So,
did you try?
man,
We always have a list of shit.
oh
Everyone
my
that
god.
invests or makes money
Oh
is like,
yeah.
we always have a list of things that didn't work. I had a beard product company at one point with a
Did
buddy.
you?
Yeah, we started this thing trying to create a whole thing about beard products. So everyone has like a line of things that didn't work.
Yeah.
So like, what were some of the line of things that didn't work?
Oh man. Okay. So I started an eBay store way back then that I was selling like subwoofers and car speakers. That was
I
my
could see
first thing.
you. I could see you.
I imported hammocks from El Salvador with the help of my mom. Um, I started a coaching program on how to teach people how to invest in forex and stocks. Um, what did I do? I had multiple jobs. I worked at Bank of Montreal. I worked. I was a real estate appraiser for a few months. I was a poker player for 6 years. I worked in
Oh
the
yes, I remember you telling me about that,
yeah.
dude. Okay, how did you? Okay, so all these list of things, but poker player lasted for 6 years.
Yeah.
How did you say, like, was it the whole? Because it was a whole trend at one point where everyone was like, "I want to be a
Yep.
poker player."
Yep.
Was that before the trend, or was it
So
the trend that kind of inspired you to do that at one point?
I did this from 2006, yeah, mid 2005 to 2011. Like I stopped when there was an event called the Black Friday. So
Okay.
basically in 2011, in June, I remember the dates. Fact check something like if we can cut and then fact check. But yeah, I think it was Full Tilt and Poker Stars.
Okay.
They just shut down, and they wouldn't allow Americans to play on online casinos.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, because I was doing this as a job, like a 9 to 5, it just shifted everything in the market. We lost a huge pool of players,
Okay.
and it just shifted everything. And also, like I had a healthy chunk of my bankroll on those sites. So all of a sudden, not have access to it.
What would happen?
Well,
Like,
I had to go on my European sites and play lower limits because it's all about bankroll management and how you manage your money
that's
and doing that
crazy.
thing. So yeah, but yeah, I did that for a while.
What it's kind of crazy because do you think like when you look back now, because now you are killing it in real estate, right? There's all these assets that are under your name and all these amazing projects that you're working on. But I always find when I look back now, I needed all of those fuck ups because in not fuck ups, but I guess lessons.
Yep.
Because in each one of them, for me, I walked away. I was a real estate agent at one point for like 2 years. Like named, I worked in restaurants too. It's like all these things, like these things. But every single one of them, when I think back now, like I took away something from it. Do you feel like each one of these, like the poker, let's say, on how to manage your bankroll, just as an example, it's like a money manager at a certain point. Like, out of all the things that you've done, what are some of the ones when you look back now, you're like, wow, I didn't realize how much this became a vital part of what I'm doing today?
That's a great question. I'm gonna have to take the easy way out and say all of them because they're part of the story. I
Yeah.
think that a better answer that I could give to that question is life becomes easier to manage and to pivot the moment that you allow yourself to be thankful for those things to happen and to consciously tell yourself, I need to learn something from this,
Yeah.
even though it sucks, even though it's not the expected result. I like to say it's not win or lose, it's win or learn. So always taking something out of a situation and then applying it later on,
Yeah.
so the poker player phase of my life was amazing because one, it allowed me to go back to university. I studied to be a screenwriter. Like I'm not doing that today, but by trade, like that's what I think I am. And I'm gonna get back to it one day.
Sooner or later, it's going to come back.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
these
yeah,
things
yeah.
always end up coming back full circle.
So there's that, but like working in the banking industry, I was exposed to credit and how it worked from the other side of
Yeah.
the table. Then real estate appraiser, I learned about the industry and I'm applying it today. I was a manager at a railroad company for close to 8 years, managed people over there, like took something out of that. But it's only because even when it sucked, right? I am now trained mentally, and that's because of poker, that I always tell myself I need to take something out of this.
Yeah.
Because if I just focus on the negative, it's too easy to get caught up in that mode. It's too easy to lose focus of where you're trying to go or what you're trying to achieve. So it's really difficult, but it's working against the ego, like
It's funny, you mentioned the poker one and just about that control, because I can imagine that to be a professional poker player, you better learn how to control your emotions too. Because
yeah.
there's going to be some crazy highs where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just made this much or whatever it is. And then the crazy lows of, I can't believe I just lost that. And like, no, I'm just thinking to myself of like, of like, what are like some of those highs and lows that, how did you manage that? And how helpful was that for you?
Man, like you're asking amazing questions. So I'm gonna give you the cold hard truth, okay? Like when I was doing this, it was my mid 20s. So I
Oh,
was
dude, and
still
already you're fucking crazy emotional in your 20s.
well, that's it. So with the cultural background, like I'm hot blooded. It was a
True.
lot of work on my ego, and I'm not gonna lie, I had to pay a software that would close my tables automatically because I was an
Yeah.
online poker player only. I only played online cash games, heads up.
Wow. That's
No
mental.
tournaments, nothing like that, just cash games, heads up. And I had a database because you could compile information on hands and you could create a database basically with against your opponents. You knew the percentage of actions that they would take. Same thing on yourself. And I had compiled enough information on myself that if I was to lose three buy-ins in one setting, I wouldn't play optimal. I would be in catch-up mode.
Okay.
So I tried to work on myself and be like, in those moments, no, you know what? You're gonna get yourself under control. You can continue this session. Nah, it didn't
You
happen.
can't. You
No,
can't.
and
You're in the
I
moment. Dude, Italian, Latino, same shit. You're gonna fucking go all in at a certain point if something doesn't stop you.
yeah, and it's really it's human nature, right? Like
Yeah.
we can't fight who we are.
Yeah.
So a big learning from that situation was that I need to use tools to help me out. And nowadays, like it's funny because I'm thinking about that now. I just got an app on my phone that it limits doom scrolling or whatever it's called, like scrolling on socials and just wasting time.
Yeah.
And it's like a learning app. So I'm learning about like history
Oh,
and shit.
I saw that. Is it actually good?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
learning
I
a
saw it.
shit
I
ton of
saw
stuff,
it
man.
because I'm like, I'm not a doom scroller, but I show up often during the day. So it'll be like small doses of like 5 minutes because then I'm annoyed. Like I just get annoyed. And I'm like 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, this is fucking stupid. And I just like I'll put it to the side. But that happens 10 times.
Yep.
So it's still 50 minutes ultimately. You know what I mean? Being wasted on this. And I'm like, I keep on seeing this fucking ad for this. Why doom scroll when you can learn history? And I'm like, I'm a history junkie.
Yeah,
So
same.
I'm like, okay. So it's good.
It's actually pretty good, and
Okay.
it's helping out, and that again is just my understanding of, I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. I
Yeah.
have my faults, and I need the help that I can get to help me out against that. So
But I think what's cool about it and what you're saying is that, if you can recognize a pattern, then there's always ways to either continuously go down this same road, which is you're going to go in and you're going to end up losing your money in this game if you keep going down that road, or you've created a system that helps you take it out. And I kind of do that when it comes to stocks. I'm like, when it hits a certain number, you sell a portion of it, put the cash on the side, great, because you know that it's not always going to be on the up. There's
yeah,
going to be a dip. So it's like, if you know this, and then, because I've been burnt when I first started playing with stocks, was like, I'm making money forever. Dude, you have
yeah,
this crazy
yeah,
thing, like you can never lose a hand.
yep,
And so you're like, I'm going to keep going in, keep going in, keep going in. And then all of a sudden, when there's a 30% drop, you're like, you fucking clown. You know what I mean? So all these things. And you realize that you have to get systems in place.
yep.
Do you feel like that concept of systems now is what's helped you on the real estate side of how to really manage all of those doors?
100%. And to use a bit of terminology from stocks, like you got to learn how to stop loss your life,
Yeah.
right?
Hard.
So in every single aspects of it. So in terms of the real estate, the moment that I started systematizing everything that I was doing, and just stop doing it on the back of a napkin, or just putting everything in motion, then yeah, it really helped because I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today at the speed at which I'm doing it if I didn't have these processes and these structures and the support with the different partnerships that I have
Yeah.
to get me where I'm going, right? Because again, I'm a faulted human being.
Yeah.
Like I'm not perfect, right? Like it's, but also that got me thinking about something. There's I'm seeing this a lot where there's this saying like jack of all trade, master of none, that type of crap. Like you always try to be good at everything, or like the whole idea of multitasking, but you really get to a different level in your business and in life when you kind of focus only on your strengths. Because by going 100% on your strengths, you're able to attract the people around you or the support system or whatever it
Yeah.
is, whatever you believe in, that will help you to compensate for those weaknesses. So instead of averaging out, go all in on your strengths, and that's it.
I had a mentor, this guy Jeff, and he had introduced this book to me called Now, Discover Your Strengths.
Okay?
And everyone's always like the same thing. Work on this part. It's the shitty part of your game in a sense, whatever it is. So practice that, practice that. And what I realized is when I would constantly only practice my weaknesses and to try to get better, it was a frustrating feeling because you're like, fuck, it's like fucking, I was telling you, handiwork. I suck. Dude, everything crooked in the house is because I did it. I suck at it. It's just, I don't have that in me. I have other like talents, and that one is just not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I remember when I read this book, it was kind of like something that I found very interesting because he's like, everyone's like, well, what are my strengths? That's the first thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to work on my strengths, but what the hell are they? And it started off with saying like, well, in general, a strength is when you're working on something and you don't even realize the amount of time. Like when you're doing something and you lose sense of time, because everything is very time oriented in our life. I don't have the time. I don't know the time, or this is too much time, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He's like, so one aspect of just a trigger that you should recognize that something about this thing that you're doing, there's something about it for you in here, is a loss of time. All time goes out the window. So I was like, okay. I remember the book was an interesting book and all that stuff. And then there was a test that you do online that's associated with Gallup testing and all this shit. And it's a really fast test. Like it's like 150 questions, and it's like, do you like dogs or cats? And you're like, what's next question? You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But it's not like right or wrong answers. It's just trying to understand who you are. And then ultimately, it gave me my list of my top 5 strengths, because you have a ton of strengths, but the ones that matter most, chances are, be most likely the top 5.
Yep.
And when I got my list of the strengths, I was like, oh fuck. It's not telling me, some specific activity. It was like, you're a learner. That's number 1. When you're learning something, you just enjoy it. Doesn't matter what it is. That whole experience of reading about it, and that's a number 1 trait for it. I'm like, fuck, it's true. I just, at times, like I'll be, my buddy laughs because he's like, you're learning about this insurance policy. He goes, dude, that sounds so boring. I'm like, I know, but look at this. And he's like, dude, don't talk to me about it. I'm like, okay, whatever. I won't talk to you about it. Second one was activator, starting projects. Third was an arranger, organizing shit. Like all those things. Fourth was achiever. You just got to see the results. And fifth was positivity, like bringing like good vibes into whatever it is that you work. You want to work in a good vibe setting. And then when I noticed, I said, oh my God, everything that I love doing as a hobby or it was always hitting one of those strengths.
Yeah.
Or most of them. So now I ask myself, whenever I do it, I look back, and as I'm working, if I see that I lost sense of time when I'm doing something, I'm like, hold on, like after, once it's done, I'm like, did I hit those strengths? And if I did, I'm like, there's something about what I'm doing right now. I need to dig in more.
Yep.
So I feel like that test really helped kind of guide me of what's a fun thing for today versus a real passion project that I want to dive into more.
Yeah.
So for you, how did you figure out your strengths in this?
Failing.
Fucking up. Like it's such a long-winded answer, books and digging in. I fucked up.
No, but to your point, that's how I'm built, right? Like I'm not that wise, but I love learning, and it's when I do things and I fail at them that I get the most out of them, right? Yeah. So I have an inkling of what constitutes my being and my preferences and stuff like that in pretty much all aspects of my life, and that's still going to be evolving, obviously, as I get older. But I just spent some time, doing some introspection and realizing what I'm really good at, what I enjoy. Because if I enjoy it, then, like you said, you don't see time pass,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, that was basically it. Failing, trying different things. I'm not afraid of trying. I'm also the word in French is autodidact. Like I love learning by myself. I love learning, like to your point, like reading an insurance policy. Okay, great, but it could be pretty much about anything. Like one of my major steps into the real estate world was in 2020. I got furloughed by the railroad company that I was working at when nothing was running,
Yeah.
and I had moved into a triplex that we were going to renovate. So I decided to go to YouTube University and learn how to renovate.
Isn't that crazy? Like that you have access. YouTube is just phenomenal. And for me, if it wasn't for YouTube, my chalet would have been a fucking disaster the first 2 years. I was like, what do I do? Everything was on it.
That's
Hi,
it.
I'm Jeff from Washington. In the hot tub, I sell hot tubs. And it's like I was some random guy, dude.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
but that's one of my strengths is I don't mind being put in a position where I don't know something, I'm going to figure it out. And if I don't, well, I'm going to learn from it and carry it on, right? Like I
Yeah.
think I read a quote somewhere, but your level of success as an entrepreneur is proportionate to the number of times that you're going to say to yourself, fuck it, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. It's, dude, that's so accurate. Everything that I've done, it was always because I'm fucking lost and I don't know, man. I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
There's also that element of like you kind of put in this corner where you're like, I have guests coming tomorrow at the chalet. I need to fix this fucking thing because they need it to rent this place. Like it's just mandatory.
Yep.
And whenever something is kind of like you burn the ships and you gotta,
Yeah.
survive or you're gonna get killed on the shore, somehow always find a way. It just forces you to just focus on what's a priority. How do I fix this? How do I do this efficiently? And then all the noise kind of goes out. I noticed that whenever you're in those situations, your phone is on the side, like once you're done watching YouTube, you know, but you're like, your phone goes on the side and you're like, I just need to focus. And this thing that you thought would take like 4 hours is done in 2 now or whatever it is. Cause you're just really in it. But you said the triplex, right? You said this, but I mean, a lot of times people feel like they'll get tapped. They'll buy this like one place or in real estate. And then they're like, man, I don't know how the fuck, like right now, we were talking about, I think it was like 39 doors and 84 doors and in Alberta and on all these projects you're working on. And I think for a lot of people, when they hear stuff like this, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
They're like, I can't even buy one house. I can't afford one house for me. And I'm talking to someone here that's talking about closing 84 doors this week. You know what I mean? Because last week was 31 doors. And, no, but I'm just trying to say as an
Yep.
example, how do you turn from the Rodrigo that was like having to convince his family into one property in St. Thérèse to the person that is today that is closing, projects, not houses anymore?
Okay, that's a great question. That's a tough question.
Pretty good question. I'm pretty good at this.
That's yeah, you're pretty good. But it's really difficult to answer because it's not something that you can just flip a switch and make it happen.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of, it's a process.
Yeah.
So I think at the top is welcoming, cherishing, loving delayed gratification.
Oh yeah, you better be.
If
It is
you're
the
not
most
okay with
fucking-
that, yeah, if
Yeah.
you're not okay with that, everything else will seem impossible, right? And it's the idea that you're doing something with purpose for something eventual later, like it's gonna happen eventually, like it's your North Star. You got to get comfortable with that, and then I would say that especially where we live right now, like the main reason why I got to where I'm going is because of what I just said right now. Like triplex in 2020, like we sold our single family home that I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in because it was freaking amazing.
Yeah.
I just had my second daughter, and we had the space, we had the backyard, we had all of that. But then I started learning more and more about real estate, and then I heard this thing about house hacking, where you're basically living somewhere and somebody else is helping you with your expenses.
Yeah.
And I had an inkling, this idea where I didn't want to stay at my job for the rest of my life. I loved what I was doing, but I also tasted previously, like i.e. in the poker times,
Yeah.
freedom.
I'm gonna say, how was that going from a poker idea, right, where you're controlling, you're self-sufficient basically,
Yep.
to a 9 to 5?
Necessity.
Okay.
There's no other answer to that. I needed to do it. Like as much as the poker time was amazing, like that also taught me something about the financing aspect of real estate and acquisitions because I was with my girlfriend at the time. I was making, good money playing poker, but I couldn't get finance to buy a house.
It's true. How you gonna go to the bank and say, like what were their answers when you went to the house? Like
Well, no, they're like, well, that's nice, buddy, but you don't have a pay stub.
yeah, but isn't that so crazy? It's like you can have all this money, prove that you've been making all this money for a year, and they're like, it's not as reliable as 9 to 5, which is I find one of the most unreliable things because someone could just cut it off
Yeah,
tomorrow.
but that's part of the learning process,
Yeah.
right? It forced me to look at where we live and the way things are happening from a different perspective. So again, the idea of compromise, the idea of delayed gratification is if I want to taste, eventually in my life, this level of freedom, I'm going to have to put up with stuff that are not ideal, which was a job, right?
Yeah.
So that was basically the mindset, man. Like, even when it sucked, I'm like, no, this is part of a process. This is leading me to something. And that's how it happened, really.
Did you have like at moments you're like, fuck, I don't want to be here, man, at this job? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, because you have this vision now of something else. Did you already know real estate was in that vision when you went back to work, or was it that you were figuring things out about real estate
So
while you were at the job, or the job maybe propelled you to go into real
yeah,
estate?
it did because I can't talk bad about what happened because that job enabled me to get credit, to get financing, to get started, right? To become an owner when we bought our condo and then we sold it and we moved into a house. So it helped me get somewhere. And the real estate portion, I'm still figuring out. Like I'm not gonna lie, like that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. Like you need the ability to pivot without minimal effort so that you keep on moving, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not a straight line. The important thing is moving in that direction,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that over and above anything, like to answer your question, were there moments that sucked? Like, yeah, man, there's moments that suck now in
Yeah.
what I'm doing, and even though it's great, But again, I think that the only reason why I'm able to keep like a certain level of sanity and still enjoy the process is that I keep on telling myself this is part of the process.
Yeah.
This is part of the journey. This is a stepping stone on the path to where I want to go, wherever that is.
I was gonna say, where do you want to go?
Um, I don't even know.
That is
I
that.
did.
But you see, I was about to say, I find anyone that can clearly answer where they want to go has somewhat limited where they can actually go. In a weird way. Like
Yeah.
if you can verbalize exactly, I want to be here. A part of me is always like, but if you can think it, chances are, there's a part of you that has said, "Oh, I can't get bigger than that," or "I can't do more than that." Like, it's like I don't know. It's a
Man,
weird.
I have a good story about that. I have a
Okay,
good thing because
tell me.
I agree. So this is again from personal experience. So a few years back, I used to run a lot. I still love running as a sport. It's fucking amazing because it sucks. All right.
Oh, dude, I know. I do. At one point, I was running. It's the best and worst sport ever.
Yes.
You fucking hate it, but when you're done, you fucking love every run once you're done. But to start it, you want to kill yourself every time.
So the point that I'm trying to make is so I was training for the Montreal Marathon in 2019. And what ended up happening is, you're training for, I don't know, 6 months, call it a few months before. You have a goal. Like it's a very specific point,
Yeah.
a target, right?
42.2
That's
kilometers.
it. And ideally in a certain amount of
Yeah.
time, right? But what happened to me is the moment that I completed that race, I kind of lost motivation in running.
100%. The moment I finished the marathon, I almost didn't run for like 2 months. I didn't even want to look at my shoes. I was like, get this shit out of my face. I'm done with you.
So to me anyways, that experience, it taught me that if I know how my mind works, like I'm still discovering who I am.
Yeah.
I can't be putting these boundaries to your point about what I want out of life because going back to what I said earlier, like we are in a world of opportunities. Like as much as sometimes life sucks and there's horrible things happening around the world, I believe that I have access to a lot of opportunities. Sorry, as long as I remain healthy,
Yeah,
right?
that's step one.
So why would I limit myself? Like I want to have a production company and I want to produce movies eventually. I want to acquire properties in Central America and South America because I want to be able to own something in my parents' countries. I want to do the same thing in Europe. I own a short-term rental here in Quebec, a cottage in More Nights. Well, I'd like to have that around the world so I can go and travel and check on my properties.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that it's kind of like, this is funny because it reminds me of a story of my railroading days. But so I had a director over there that introduced the book Start With Why, right?
Oh yeah, Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Amazing book, right?
You know, it's a great book, and then after some while, I'm like, okay, it's repetitious at a certain point, but you need that. I find it's like it's repetitive because it reminds you that the why is so important.
Yes. And it's really this idea that is going to enable you to go through the shitty times, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like Churchill said, if you're going through hell, why would you stop?
Yeah,
Why would you
100%,
stop, right?
100%.
So, anyways, the story about that is that director made us read the book, and I'm reading the book, I'm like, oh, this is great. So, what's my why? And I was like, well, just because I want to be the best version of myself.
Yeah,
And that's what I said in front of my whole team and this person. And the answer that I got was basically, that's bullshit, Rod. That's bullshit. That's not the right answer. I'm like, well, who are you to tell me?
how could someone say your
What
why
kind of- yeah.
for you is the wrong answer for you? Like,
But in my mind, and I don't know if I was being a smart ass or
Yeah.
it's really what I believe. I think it's the latter one. But if I don't have a specific goal and my goal is just to improve, then I'm never going to be satisfied, and I'm never going to have to stop. It's going to be a continuous thing, right? So it's funny because that book kind of made it so that a lot of the other books that I read after, like I read after that, The Richest Man in Babylon.
oh yeah, what do we
And-
have? The same fucking library over here.
But I don't know, man. I don't know.
How did this happen? Look, that was the book that changed my whole point of view on savings. Richest
Yeah,
Man
me
in
too.
Everything, however I saved every dollar after that and how I invested was based on that book. That was the first one, and I read Start With Why after, but that was years ago. I read that book, and it was like, wow.
Yeah.
What a great fucking short book, easy to understand, like a fable vibe to it. And it was like, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And the thing about that one for me was that this whole idea of if you make work like not as heavy as it could be, then you'll never work a day of your life. If you actually love what you do, then it won't be work.
You know, it's funny you say that. And I feel like there's this weird vibe when people say that, when they look at you and they say, oh, shut the fuck up with that, you know, if you love your job. But the truth is it's not that you love your job unconditionally and that there's never a day where you want to fucking quit. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like there's days that I'm working on stuff and I love doing this stuff and I'm like, fuck it. I don't want to do anymore. I'm exhausted. Can't I just go on vacation? Why can't I just, you know, I don't know if you have those things. I'm sell everything. I'm going and open up a cafe in Jamaica and I'm just going to live off the beach.
I thought about that.
Oh, dude. The amount of times that I've thought about that, I'm just like, sell everything, take whatever the profits are, go buy a fucking little cafe here and just work on this beach. And then you're like, yeah, that does sound good, but I don't like fucking being in a cafe all fucking day. I actually really like this podcast. I really like all these things, and I want to keep on doing this. It's just, it's right now, I blew my top. And maybe, to me, every time I find I do that, I know I've overworked.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, get the fuck out of the house. Like you got, or whatever it is you're doing, just take a break and actually stop thinking about it.
Yep.
Because you know you love doing this shit. But right now, you just need a break. It's kind of like when you get into an argument with your wife or your girlfriend, you know, it's like, you know what, I love you and everything, but I need to go for a walk. You know, I
Yep.
just need to take that time to think of what's going on because clearly my head is not clear. And there's some like shit that's going on and I need to fix this because if I'm going to come back, if not, I'm going to start poisoning the thing that I really love to work on.
Yep.
You know, but for you, dude, when like all these books, who is showing you these books?
Oh, okay. So it started with like different real estate podcasts, some personalities that I was listening to. But recently I started listening to this podcast called Founders by David Senra.
I feel like I've heard of it. Yeah.
Man, that changed my life.
Yeah.
Okay, like hands down, it's probably like one of the main reasons why I've been able to have the level of success that I've had in the short amount of time. The whole podcast is him reading biographies of people that have done shit in life.
Okay.
So obviously, like it started with like Steve Jobs or whatever, but then you get into like different business people,
Yeah.
and that's like the best access to knowledge you could always have because people have done these things, right?
Yeah.
So every time I listen to a story of, on my way here, I was listening to the story of the guy who started Visa. Can't remember his name. Sorry, but
Also, just an interest rate hike on your car.
but the guy started Visa when he was like 40 something years old.
That's to me. I have to admit, my favorite stories. I love stories of when they're young and it's great, whatever. But being a 40-year-old man now, I don't want to read a story about a guy that made it when he was 18.
Yep.
I'm like, because then you feel like you feel bad. If not feel bad, but you say, fuck it. Like, did I miss the boat? Am I old? You have these weird thoughts. You know you're not old. But in that moment, reading that one, I find I like reading stories now where it doesn't work out at the beginning when they're 25.
Yeah.
It's working out in their 30s. It's working out in their 40s. Because I realized that for me, I didn't see much success really till later on in life. I didn't have that 18-year-old huge successful business, and I was smoking cigarettes, playing guitar. Like I didn't think, you know what I mean? Like in my mind, I was like, I
Yeah.
didn't have that, so I don't relate as much to that book.
Yeah.
Whereas, if anything, maybe what I relate to is that you failed, and then you got back up, or you started late, or something like those are the ones that tend to really they hit home. Like or someone that had a dream and just kept on working, and no matter what, all the perseverance, like that stuff to me is. So I got to check this out.
Yeah, yeah, no, check it out. It's freaking amazing. And the thing that it's gonna do
So
is
sorry
that
about the visa guy though. You were saying,
yeah, so basically like he started when he was like 40, but his whole idea is that before that he was in the corporate world and he got like disillusioned about it because of different things. Like a lot of stuff that kind of related with my path and you take bits and pieces here and there and I've adapted it to my business. So not this one necessarily, but um there was an episode about Ted Turner, the guy who started Viacom, like this
yeah,
this huge Comcast, sorry, in the States, and his whole thing was you need to get assets so you can leverage them and put them in negotiation. Basically, get them however you want because the moment that you have them, you can actually
yeah,
leverage them however you see
someone's
fit.
gonna want him.
Exactly. So totally different from another business school of mine of no debt and acquire what you can only acquire and grow as you grow. Well, typical American, like go big or go home. So it just for me anyways, it challenges my paradigm, right? Like because I get to a certain level and I think it comes from the ego, obviously, but when you have a certain level of success or you're really good at something, and I'm not saying I'm really good at whatever, but I'm just saying like I have had success,
Yeah.
you don't challenge or question your MO anymore because you're like, that worked, right? And it's very easy to become comfortable.
Oh yeah. So easy that you actually fuck up your business.
Exactly. So for me, it's a constant reminder to challenge myself and reevaluate how I'm doing things because I could be doing something differently and I could optimize certain things. Or if I learn about how somebody failed at something and they got back from it or they didn't, then it's acquired knowledge that I can apply on my business and my life, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's probably like my biggest thing and hopefully people check it out. Like it's not that big of a podcast, I think. And if not for books, I usually ask people
Yeah.
like, what are you reading? Like what are you like? I usually get recommendations really.
It's funny. Actually, I'm thinking of how did I figure out about all these books? And remember years ago, remember this guy? He was fucking everywhere on YouTube at one point. Ty Lopez.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ty Lopez, like 10 years ago, whatever it is. I remember, and he used to fucking bombard. I think he still does, but compared to like 10 years ago, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And he had this like list of books. And I remember I said, fuck it, let me look at the list of books. And there was, Richest Man in Babylon. There was Total Recall from Arnold Schwarzenegger. There was a ton of books, like from inspirational leaders to, money managers to CEOs to, anyways, all kinds of stuff. And I found to me, there's something about reading a book. I know it sounds old school, But if you grab a book and once you really get into it and it really connects with you, or resonates with you, it really shifts something in you.
Yep.
There's no movie that does that the same way. Like you could watch a movie and it's like enticing, but it's a 2 hour thing. But committing to that like book that takes you, 4 weeks or whatever it is to finish reading, because especially at the beginning when you're not a big reader and you get a fucking stack, you're like, oh my God, how am I going to finish this? And then you finish this book, and even just the idea of finishing it, I feel like it does something to you mentally. I don't know, is it just me or is
No,
it
no, it's
okay?
not. Like like you're totally right because you use the right word, committing. It's a commitment, right? Like you're starting something and you want to see it through. And in today's society, where I think our attention span is shorter than a goldfish now or something, like
Excuse me, what'd you say?
but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's super difficult to
Yeah.
consciously tell yourself, I'm gonna sit down, not move,
No
only
phone.
read,
Yeah.
read this, and to be quite honest with you, for me it is challenging to have the reading sessions that I had when I was younger, like 20 years ago. I can't do that. I have to
I block
plug in.
time.
Yeah,
I have to block
exactly,
time. I'm like, okay,
exactly.
5 pages a day. Like I remember at one point, it was just like, there was like a minimum requirement, a block of like 25, 30 minutes, or else it's never going to get done.
Yep.
And then I remember I found it was almost like therapy in a sense, where you just kind of block out everything for that 20, 30 minutes and you read this book. And I find because you cut it and it's not this one sitting, you kind of walk into it every day, like looking for more.
Yeah.
And you actually, I don't know, I find I soaked up the information where I'd be like, and I would be thinking about it during the day, like that one paragraph or that one line just resonated. And I don't know, there's something about, and even a physical book, like
Yep.
sometimes I listen to audiobooks, they're good, but sometimes I get lost, like as you know, like you're driving, you listen to all of a sudden the traffic, and I don't know, something happens. There's something about just sitting down, like outside, even in the backyard, especially summertime or whatever, and you just like grab a book or on the beach and just, you're reading a book, you could just go through it and you enjoy it. I don't know, I find it just connects for me. I love reading books. And I found that the moment I started liking reading again, because I hated, or not that I hate, I just stopped reading. At one point, I don't know in your life, if you're just like, no books, I had nothing going on. Once I kind of resparked that whole idea, it was like, fuck, I felt like I got smarter. Like just instantly, like just more in touch with like the reality of things, listening to other stories and oh my God, well, I could do this. Maybe I could do this too. And I felt like it reinvigorated me to want to get creative again, to be
Yep.
honest.
Well, that's a really good point, man. Because for me, what it was is there was always that autodidact thing that I said that I wanted to learn from books or from videos or whatever it is from other people's experiences. But the thing with books I find is it's such. I just had this thought now. It's kind of like a parallel with running
Mm-hmm.
because it's difficult, but you need to do it. It's difficult, but it has so many benefits,
Yeah.
right? And when you think about it, I'm sure that from your brain's perspective, like when you're reading, there's probably stuff happening in there that's shaping it, making it better, and you can concentrate longer and longer. So that's kind of why we need to do it. And in the podcast I was talking about, the guy always says like books are the original hyperlinks
Yeah. Pretty
because
much.
they redirect you to other books or other authors that expand your knowledge on a certain subject. And I think that the thing that I really appreciate about this phase of my life where I'm really learning about different subjects is, it's the old cliche, but the more I know, the more I realize
I don't know
I don't
anything.
know shit.
I know it's so insane.
I'm fucking dumb.
Yeah, yeah. I realized like how dumb am I because I thought I was so smart.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, I thought I knew this. I'm like, dude, you don't know shit. And when you think you know, chances are you really don't. So
Yeah.
shut the fuck up and just like do you read, like listen more, less talking.
Yeah.
On this show obviously it doesn't sound like that because I'm a fucking chatterbox, but it's this idea of like when you're with people that are doing something, like listen to what they're saying. They're saying something here that can spark an idea versus you just trying to fill up space in a room because you think that actually makes you look like a fucking idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Like
Yeah.
shut up actually.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so true. And on my end now that I'm coaching, like I really enjoy sharing what I learn. I really enjoy that. Like
Yeah.
there's there's something that I find about seeing the spark in somebody's eyes when I'm like, I bring this piece of information that I just found out or I absorbed or I actually like fully understood and I'm able to share it and make them understand it. And then they use it to their own, to whatever they want to use it for, right? Like
Yeah.
whether it's business related, life related, whatever it is, or just a quote or whatever it is,
Yeah.
like it's that spark in people's eyes. Like I really enjoy. That's what I'm taking the most pleasure out of right now. Like it's sharing that knowledge.
What? Why did you like? Okay, I see that you're passionate about it, but what made you go from saying I'm gonna be the investor to now? Because there's two types of people. There's people that don't want to share. They're like, no, 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 I just accumulate more for me, for me, for me, for me. What made you shift and say, well, I want to go into coaching and helping people in an industry that can technically they'll be my competitors if you want to look at it in one
Yeah.
way? Like, what made you change and go in that direction of coaching?
So one, it was proposed to me if I was interested in doing it.
Okay.
And the second thing was that deep down I knew that I could do it. It's just the idea was never brought into my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when this group approached me to start doing it for them, I consulted with people around me. Actually, two of them that were on this podcast.
I have an
And
idea. We
so
could say them. We don't like them, no?
so yeah, so Bava and Axel, and I was like, well, I have this opportunity. Like, what do you think? And it's by getting support from my peers that I realized that, maybe this might not be that crazy of an idea.
Yeah.
And actually, like, shout out to Axel, but Axel said, if I had access to who I was at that moment as a coach, like a few years back, I would have been happy.
Yeah.
And that gave me like that little boost of confidence that, you know what, I'll try it out. And that's really what happened. So the moment that I started coaching, I basically realized that I could provide a whole lot more value to people than I had initially thought because I had failed so
Yeah.
much. I had tried different
But
things,
you can't be a coach if you didn't fail. Like I feel like you cannot be in the role to help someone if you haven't been in that position and also fuck up in that position. Like that is the key factor. That's what makes you a credible coach, if anything.
Yeah, and also there's where way more learning opportunities in failures than in successes because our mind works in a way that we tend to remember the pain more than the pleasure, right? Long
Definitely.
term. So it's really about taking those moments and figuring out what you can take out of them and how you can apply it to a certain situation.
Yeah.
So it's easy in real estate because when you think about it, it's kind of everything is correlated. There's
Mm-hmm.
not that many unknowns in the sense of if you make an acquisition that is, not ideal because you bought it overpriced or whatever it is, or interest rates or whatever you want to call it, like it's very easy to point where the mistake was made,
Yeah.
right? So in my case, like, one of the main things that I focus on in my coaching is how do you structure successful partnerships? How do you structure environments where there's an opportunity for every member to thrive?
It's so funny you say that. People walk into deals with this assumption that someone has to get fucked. And no, but it's the truth. It's like
Yeah.
that you're always told, like and I think that's a culture thing
Yeah.
of just how it's like you have to win at all costs, and you're like, but we could all win. Like there is a number that makes sense for you, and there is a number that makes sense for me. And if it doesn't, that means it's just not a good deal. If there's a timeline that doesn't work, but it work, like there's all these factors that can make a deal be successful for everyone, where you walk away shaking hands and not feeling like you got burnt.
Yep.
And I think I don't know if you grew up that way, but I grew up with it was like, it's like a shark idea. Like you gotta go out and you gotta get the best deal. And I'm like, I always felt weird. Like, what a shitty way to end or to start a deal or whatever, especially if you do a long-term business with someone, going in with the idea that your job is to fuck them.
Yeah.
Like how clearly it's not going to be a fun process.
No, it won't.
For anyone in
No.
here. Everyone is looking to, so what? So you made a few more dollars, but it took all this extra time, all this stress, all this pressure, extra fees because you know now whenever you do something crush, it never works out well anyways. So like, can't we just come to an agreement that works for everybody? Like, why does that seem so insane when, and every time I'm noticing is there's more and more people saying, can't we do this? Versus the old school mentality of go in with a bulldozer to destroy everything.
So I think to your point, like there's a generational gap also with that. Like I remember having examples of growing up of what negotiation be, where you would go and look at a product and find everything that's wrong with it and ask to still buy it at a reduced price.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that might work, but there's a different way of doing things, right?
Yeah.
And I just find that, you know, again, maybe it's to what I've been exposed to and my professional path and what I'm doing right now as an entrepreneur, but I believe that, cooperation is way better than competition. At a certain level of business, competition is still there, yes, but there's a whole lot of cooperation.
Yeah.
And especially in this industry, like, even if I'm coaching people, like, yes, they're my competition, but I don't see it that way,
Yeah.
because it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going after the same things that I'm going. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to lead to a direct conflict
Yeah.
or a confrontation, really, right? Like, Phil Knight said, the guy from Nike, he
Yeah.
said, like, business is war without bullets. That's a very cutthroat approach to business, obviously,
Yeah.
but there is some truth to that. If you allow yourself to think the Phil Knight way and think of it as war, out of war, there's also peace. It goes hand in hand, right? And in war, there's espionage, there's partnerships, there's alliances, there's, even if they're temporary, right?
Yeah.
So why does it have to be like you have to win over somebody else, but you can't just win in general, like you were saying?
Yeah.
So the way that I go about it, and I like to talk about it, is, just go into a negotiation or an acquisition, whatever it is, and just figure out what the need is.
Yeah.
Like,
If
what do
there's
you?
no need, then we don't need to be in this
We
negotiation.
wouldn't be
Yeah,
here, right?
exactly. But that's what I don't understand from people is that if we're in the middle of doing this, and I've been in multiple contracts with customers and in the past, and it's this war, like they're lying to you about the needs, you're holding back on these things, and you're like, but if I would know your needs, I would only present what you actually need, and then we could get past this and say, what's the price points now? Like, what are the minimum thresholds? I can't go here, you can't go there. Okay, great. This is our playground. How do we negotiate now on timelines? How do we negotiate on the things that now actually make this deal go
Yeah.
forward? But if you're starting off with lies or starting off with withholding information and you're playing this game, it's gonna end in such a strained relationship where when you sign the contract, you actually don't like each other.
Yeah.
And now you have to work together. And
Yeah.
you gotta get past the last 4 months of just bullshit that could have been easily avoided and closed up in 2 months.
That's it.
It's such an insane process, but it's a continuous one. No matter the industry, whether it's tech, real estate, it's this same stupid game that could make life so much easier. When if you would just fucking tell me what you need, tell
Yep.
me what you need. I can't do it. Fantastic. Go find someone else.
Yeah. Like, there's also a game component to it. Like, the really good
Yeah.
people at this, they view it as a game.
Yeah.
They gamified life and they won at it,
Yeah,
right?
that's what it is. That's the only thing that makes sense out of it because the pain makes no sense.
That's it. So if you're in a position where you don't have the same level of anxiety and high stake feeling to this particular situation, but you actually allow yourself to go about it without the importance of the moment, as if somebody that has never done it, you'll actually have fun doing it and you can think about it creatively, right?
Yeah.
It's just that it really takes experience and for you to challenge yourself as to how you view it and not work for your own gains, but you work for the deal.
Yeah.
And that sounds so simplistic, but the moment that you look at it from a deal perspective and you want the deal to happen and you want this to, pan out, or you sign the contract, then it doesn't become necessarily about you.
Yeah, it becomes about the actual process, like the actual
The deal.
outcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Like everyone wants something here.
Yeah.
It's like that idea. What's that line? Everyone hates to be sold, but they love to buy.
Yeah.
So it's like so if we love to buy and I love to sell, like we can find a way where it works out for everybody. And the more deals I close, the more money I make anyways.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and the more things you buy or whatever it is, you're using it for whatever reason you need it, X reason to make you money doing whatever it is. And it's like, there's this flow that can happen so much easier versus this friction. It's like the whole idea, even when you watch movies or whatever it is, it's like they love the friction
Yeah.
and deals and I'm like, dude, if somebody would have just actually opened their mouth and said what they needed, you could have like saved 4 months of your life, and the stress and the fucking sleepless nights and all it's such a ridiculous way of doing business.
Yeah, it is. And I think that what's happening with that kind of thought or that mindset is, I think that there's a shift where we're starting to value way more emotional intelligence than like old school IQ, right?
Yeah.
Because what we're talking about right now, it's emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
If you have the ability to have empathy and understand somebody else's point of view as fast as possible and know how to structure your words and your questions to get to the unspoken need, you'll be fucking lethal.
Yeah, and everyone wins. No,
You
but everyone, but it's like it's lethal, but in a way that actually gets a process completed
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
You know, versus lethal in this, I'm out to kill you.
Yeah. Or I'm winning something over you,
Yeah, I
right?
have this power over
Yeah.
you. Like I'm the winner, you're the loser. It's like, dude.
No, it's I think it's a wonderful thing, and obviously like thrive in that environment. I'm not the smartest, I don't have the most experience, but the thing that I do well is I ask the right questions in those
Yeah.
environments, right? And I'm not intimidated. So I like whenever I coach or I do stuff for myself, I always try something different. I'm gonna ask a question a different way, or
Yeah.
or go a different like thought
It's like a
process.
practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's also because I've gamified it. Like that idea of not taking it so seriously, but just figuring out how you can get to the different level, right?
Well, I think I saw a post. I don't remember when, but you had said like you had shown a project, and you had said what it cost, and there was all this stuff, and then this is what you walked away with. And I was kind of like, you know, you're talking like sometimes you win, next one. Like sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. It's next project, and I kind of have a similar feeling, even let's say with stocks, whatever it is. Sometimes you make more, sometimes you don't make as much, but you learn something out of it, move on. It's like the end of a project, you actually learn something, you're moving forward. And that's what I kind of always liked in the approach that you had too, is that you looked at it, it's like, dude, it's not always going to be a rocket like, you know, scenario where it's an amazing, I made $400,000 on this $2,000. You know, it's like, no, it's like sometimes you only make a certain amount, and that was a win. That's a different kind of win.
Yep.
And then there's big wins, there's small wins, there's all bases, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is. And I think that's what's helped you. So I don't know if you want to go into the details, but the amount of doors that you have, right?
Yeah.
You're talking in, you know, I don't know what the number is. It seems pretty high based on our conversations. And then now in funds, and you're working on all these different projects. I feel like all those, that the way you think and, you know, just getting on base and kind of getting as the runs, whatever you need to do to get the runs in, has helped you accumulate all these doors, has helped you kind of gain that knowledge in these new projects also that you're working, which was, you know, funding and all that stuff. So I don't know, how are you seeing things now when it comes to Rodrigo today and for the future, and how you plan on seeing this vision for yourself in real estate?
That's another tough one. I think that I don't have it clearly laid out, right? Like I'm still growing in this phase of my entrepreneurial life. You know what you're mentioning about shifting from a syndication model, which is basically what I've been doing up to this point, where syndication is really just taking funds from this person, that person, that person, and then you're buying one asset, versus a fund model where you collect the funds with an investment thesis, and your investors understand that you're going to be buying these things if they fit this criteria, and it's a specific time frame that you're going to be deploying the capital and doing this project. I don't know where that can take me, right? Because in Canada, it's not as important as we're seeing in the United States, but even freaking Tony Robbins' last book is about the fund model, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, everything that I've done up to this point and the way that I approach business has enabled me to get to where I'm at right now, because it's a team sport. I understand that my value in what I can present to my partners and investors comes from getting the deal to the table,
Yeah.
not how much we're going to be making, right? At the end of the day, and you're in stocks, right? Like you have a baseline, the S&P 500.
Yeah.
And the
It's
only
giving you an idea what the market is. Just
that's
that.
it. So that's your baseline. You're basically benchmarking that and your results, and that's how you perform. It's the same thing in what I'm doing because my investors and potential investors that I have, well, it's either other real estate deals that has a specific metric that we've seen historically, or if they're sophisticated and they have access to the stock market, they're gonna base the proposition that I have based on that
Yeah.
10 to
That.
12% on the S&P for the
Yeah.
past 10 years,
Yeah.
right? So in my mind, I think that I'm more about finding the right type of opportunities than necessarily returns because at the end of the day, people are when you're in the position of what I'm doing, what I'm syndicating or funding deals, people invest in me,
Yeah.
not in the
They.
four walls,
Yeah.
right? They invest in the team that I've
There's a
assembled or
vision that.
that's it. So I'm more focused on that. I'm more focused on providing value to people that I work with because, the past conversation that we've had, right, for what, like close to an hour now, there's a lack of knowledge that is accessible to people, right? And the stuff that we're talking about, it's not because I'm not a materialistic person. Like I still
Yeah.
live in a duplex. My brother lives upstairs. I'm not going
My
for the
car is 10 years old. Dude, like I'm in the same boat. I couldn't give a fuck about those
I
things.
don't. I really don't. Like I joke around with my wife that my goal is to be a freaking crossing guard at my kid's school. I'm,
You know,
I'm not even joking. I want to do
totally,
that.
dude, I feel like people think I'm insane at a certain point because I could not care less about all, like when I'm seeing like on social media and I see all these people with new shoes, 400, I just don't have that. Like I just don't have that, like the newest car, the Lamborghini. I'm like, it actually doesn't impress me at all because I couldn't care less about this car. For some people, they love it. For me, I'm like, I could have done so much more with them. Like in
Yeah.
my mind, I'm like, I just don't have that connection to it because there's other things that matter so much more now to me that's just for other people.
Yeah.
Like that's for other people to enjoy.
Yeah.
That's great. And for me, it's just not that connection to it.
No, and same thing with me, man. Like it's I have a different valuation system, and I'm fortunate to be able to say that, right?
Yeah.
And I realize it. But in terms of like where that's gonna lead me, like circling back to what I was saying earlier, like I don't want to impose myself certain limitations. Like I've said it before, high level, um, I want to be a crossing guard. Maybe I'll be that. Maybe I won't. I want to provide value to people. I want to have eventually my production company, and I'm realizing that I think my speech is going to be like I want to invest in people and their passion.
There's similarities in same for me. As I'm getting older, I'm realizing that the things that make me happy cannot be bought anymore.
Nope.
Like none of them. All the things that really make me happy, there's nothing in the trade-off that you can give me financially. I remember there was at one point somebody had said, they had offered me a position somewhere, and it was just like 50 grand more a year as a base. I said, that's great, as for most people, sometimes that's their base. This was an additional on top of I was like, okay, that's great, and that's nice, whatever. And the guy goes, yeah, but there's about 30% of it is minimum is travel. And I'm like, nope, not interested.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, I'm like, no, I said, there's no job in the world that you can give me that will take me from my family 30% of the time. I'm like, the money that would mean you would have to give me a job that makes me retire in 3 years.
Yep.
Like the number that I need to retire. If you can tell me in 2, 3 years I could retire by taking this job, then I'm down because now I have
Yeah.
all the time in the world to be with my family
Yeah.
after. But if you tell me that for this, I'm going to still have to work and I have to lose 30% of the time that I will never get back with my daughter. I'm like, no fucking way. Like there's no dollar sign that's going to buy back that time for me. So, but 5 years ago, no kids. I would have been, oh yeah,
Yep.
it changes the whole perspective. I find that was for me a game changer. The moment the kid showed up was just like, oh, okay, money isn't everything. Like it really, like I found time became something that was the real valuable commodity.
Yeah.
And the other thing was peace of mind.
Yep.
like if I hate what I'm doing, fuck, it doesn't matter how much it costs anymore or how
That's
much
true.
money it makes. I
And,
don't fucking
and
care.
you bring it home and they feel it, right? And the thing with me, like I have a 9 and a 6 year old daughter, and I remember somebody telling me that it's only a matter of time before your kids don't want to spend time with you anymore.
No, isn't that a crazy feeling? Like I can't picture that yet.
But we
Yeah,
went
yeah.
through it,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like,
dude. I didn't want to talk to my parent. As of 12 years old, I was like, you're not. I don't want to fucking talk to you
so you
people.
know, you go from a parenting mode where you can't even take a shit alone because they want to be with you,
Dude, this
and
morning.
but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, they don't want anything to do with you, and they're becoming their own person. Then you're able to get back to you and your couple or whatever, and then they leave. And a couple of years later, then they come back, but in a different shape or form. Like
Yeah.
everything changes, and that just motivated me into trying to have as much impact as I can have in their lives
Yeah.
and preparing them for what's coming. And that's what I'm focused on right now. So to your point, like the priority for me anyways is that freedom, but also what I can show them as opportunities. Because that's also something that I'm seeing is if you're not brought up in an environment where you're allowed to think differently or see things that are different from the general consensus, then that's your only reality. And if you're lucky or fortunate enough to have like that person in your life that just pops up like this avatar of a mentor or
Yeah.
an actual mentor, like freaking like Gandalf, like a wise person that appears out of nowhere.
Fucking
Like,
Obi-Wan Kenobi
yeah, there
shows
you
up.
go,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan, like that archetype, right?
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people don't have that opportunity.
Yeah. Most people don't.
Exactly. So we kind of have to be that. So going back to the coaching thing, that's kind of what I'm this phase of my life right now, I'm really enjoying is understanding that like you can be that person for someone, and it's not an egotistical thing. Like I really enjoy it because again, it's that spark.
Yeah. You sparked this comment that somebody said to me once, and I found it hit home, where he's like, when I was from an actor perspective, you said screenwriter and all that stuff. You had studied film. He's like, sometimes when you're younger, and as a musician, it kind of like it also rang true. And he was like, as when you're younger, you want to be the star on the screen. You want to be the actor. Then at a certain point in your life, you want to be the director, and then at a certain point, you want to be the producer.
Yes.
And I feel like in my life, I went from being the actor, I always wanted to be the actor to the director. And I can see the shift of going into the line of the producer now, where I don't need to be on the screen. I don't even care if my name is on it for certain things. I just like, I'm happy that I was part of the production of it, you know? Oh, I saw it. I hit another nerve.
That's so good because there's a quote. No, it's not a quote, actually. It's a line from Rakim, right? An
Okay.
MC. He said, I don't need the spotlight. I just need some light.
Yeah.
And the older I grow and the more things that I do, I end up realizing that really resonates with me.
Yeah.
Because, like, I used to break dance, like in my teens.
Dude, you're mental.
You
I
know?
you gotta send me a picture of the poker player, the breakdancer, dude. You're on fire.
So like I did that. Like the eyes are on you. Like
Yeah.
you're the main focus of attention, and you love it. You thrive on it, right? And it shifts. Like now, I can't do it anymore. But I don't need to be at the forefront as much as in the business that I do, and like with you, like the stage or the mic. That the stage is the most expensive piece of real estate there is.
Yeah.
Because when you're on stage, people listen to you, they look at you, like there's also a reason why they're lower than you.
Yeah. In a
Right?
weird way, they're looking up at
They're
you.
looking
They're
up.
waiting for something from you.
So there's that. But I'm getting to a point where I don't know if it's more how I'm built inside, but I don't need that, and I don't want it as much. I want to take care of the people that came up with me, that supported me, and I'm supporting them, and then I can impact my circle, right? Like
Yeah.
the people around me, because I can't save everybody, and I can't change the world.
Isn't it
I
such
can't-
a good feeling when you realize I can't save everybody?
Oh my God, there's such a weight that's lifted from your
Ah,
shoulder, depending on how you're built, right?
Yeah, at one point, I was like, I gotta help this, help that, and then you're like, you know what? I'm gonna help the people that want to help themselves. And then no, but like that because they need to know that they want help. You know, because I would think like I can help, I can help, I can help, and I was like, no, 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 that's your ego that's talking. It's you can help someone that walks into a room and says, "Hey, man, I need some help." You know, and you're like, "Okay, let's sit down, let's talk, let's figure out this shit together."
Yep.
But for me to walk into a room and say, "You need help, you need help," like, dude, that's a bit of a ego dickhead move on your side. Like, who the fuck are you to walk in
Yep.
and you think you're a superhero, you can fix everyone's problems, and it's like, no, dude, it
Yeah.
doesn't work
Most
that
of the
way.
time, it's like fucking level
You don't
one
even
projection.
understand
Yeah.
how the fuck you gonna fix, you know?
That's it. It's like level one projection most of the time.
Yeah.
You're pushing onto someone what you would want to fix in yourself. But it's it is such a powerful thought to realize that you can have more impact on the people that actually want your help than trying to fix everybody.
Yeah.
And it changes the way you go about in life, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like that. Like I wanted to provide as much help, but the thing is, there's such a disheartening thing that happens when you're reaching out to someone and trying to pull them up and providing resources and time and everything, and they don't take it, or
No.
they don't come through, and it's
It builds up something in you in a negative perspective.
absolutely
Totally.
like it's is it me, you know,
What's
or
wrong with them? Is it me? It's like all you see is a bad thing out of that.
it's all doubt,
Yeah, it's all doubt and fear or anger, frustration,
and
whatever it is.
it's not good, man. So I'm in a position in my life where I know I can provide help. I do provide help,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not gonna waste enough energy to try to see who I can help because I already know who I need to help, right?
Yeah,
And it's not because I'm heartless. I actually have a huge heart.
you're a piece of shit.
No, but you know what I mean. Like it's
You
just,
are a mean motherfucker.
and I remember hearing at one point like the first stage to fix a problem is realizing that there is or identifying it.
Yeah,
But I can't do that to someone until they do it themselves, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? I need some help." I'm like, "Fuck it, I'll drop everything that I have and I'll help you now because you asked for it."
yeah, man.
But that's evolution, I guess, right? And kind of where
Getting old too. Like as you're getting old, not everyone gets older wiser, but I find there's something when you have failures in life or setbacks, there is a humanizing experience that happens where you're like, oh fuck, it doesn't always work out.
no,
Oh shit, this is hard. Oh shit, I never felt like this before. I never experienced a pain like that or a fear or, and then when you can come back from it, you're like, oh, I'm alive. I'm still here. Like there's this weird element that I survived, whether it was emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever the story is, and there is a strength that just happens in you to realize like, oh, I am human. Like it's this
yeah,
weird thing. Like I'm not a god in a
yeah,
sense.
absolutely. That's to me what you're describing is one of my main takeaways of Stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like the moment that you read up on that school of thought or whatever it's called, um, they cherished hardships. Like there's a saying that was it's actually the name of my company, my social media or whatever. It's ad astra per aspera, so to the stars through hardships,
Mm-hmm.
because you will attain whatever you want out of life only through hardships.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it.
Yeah.
So, like it's kind of like you gotta cherish it, man. You gotta welcome it. You gotta be okay with it. You gotta understand that it's part of life.
Yeah.
And also, if it doesn't happen to you, then maybe there's a reason, right? Like maybe you're avoiding those situations because you're too comfortable or you don't want to grow. And
Yeah.
that's the thing also with growing, man. Like as like growing is painful. Like let's just look at a plant growing. Imagine what it is.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
you're,
dude, I it's funny. I look at my daughter and she's about almost 2 years old now. And you realize that there's a lot of similarities of a baby and adults.
Yeah.
Like, that when you don't like something and you don't want to do something, you bitch or whatever it is. For them, they just cry, right? That's their a main way of saying that something is wrong. They cry, but then there's also just natural like physical growth that happens that we don't know, but in their brain there's all these things that are happening and they can't control it, and so they just act in certain ways, and you're like, oh my god, is this ever gonna end this phase?
Yeah.
Like you think you got the fucking hack, dude. She's sleeping by 7:30, you're on fire, like, yeah, I got this shit, and then all of a sudden schedule just goes to shit. When every time you think you have everything in order, schedule goes to shit. But it goes to shit for like a month, let's say,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, 2 weeks, and then it comes back to like a new schedule, and you start figuring stuff out. But that phase for her she's growing right now. She doesn't understand. She doesn't get it. But there's something that's happened physically, hormones, mental changes, physical changes. She's growing at a rapid rate. Every day she's learning something new. Every day is a brand new moment, a new emotion. Like, and they're trying to process all these things.
Yeah.
And you're like trying to control it. And you're like, no, dude, you have to kind of manage this. That's what I'm starting to realize is I can't control it. She doesn't want to sleep right now. Don't sleep. We have to kind of, this is our hardship now of having to deal with a baby that is still up at 10 o'clock at night and she doesn't want to sleep and you know she's going to still wake up early and you're fucked up. But that's part of the parent hardship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have to deal with the shit that comes with this stuff.
Absolutely. Like it's funny that you mentioned that because the first thing that I thought was imagine how traumatizing it would be if they could use words, just the idea of teething. Like you know what I mean? Like something growing out of your mouth. You have fever, like you can't eat, it hurts, and you don't have any way to communicate that pain or that emotion, right? So the only thing you can do is you cry.
Dude, if adults had to go through the amount of new shit mentally every day, that's a big, like when I think about it, I'm like, we'd be the biggest bitches and assholes in the world because we have a job, let's say as an example, that we do for 5 years.
Yeah.
No changes. One thing changes. They change like a strike that really doesn't even impact you. And you could see like the Slack feeds and everyone is just fucking losing their minds and going crazy because one little change, shift in their life. Where for the baby, you're like, they take all these new changes every single day and keep trucking. They don't even talk about it. Like
No.
it happens and it's over. So I know we can continue talking all day about babies and business and all this shit, but I want to ask you, we've been talking for almost an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
How do you want to end this conversation and how you want people to think of Rodrigo by the end of this hour and 20 minutes?
Oh, wow.
What do you want them to walk away with? How about that?
Well, basically that resilience is probably the most important thing that you can have as a human being. We're only going to be faced with opportunities, challenges, difficulties, whatever you want to call it. And it's our ability to go through these sometimes traumatic events and keep on moving forward, right? So yes, I'm in real estate. Yes, I'm in business. Yes, I've done multiple things. But if I can leave something with the audience after all of this is, if you're gonna bet on something in life, you might as well be betting on fucking yourself. Go all in on yourself always. And the worst that comes to worst is you just try something else after. So yeah, welcome the suck, embrace it, go through it, and come out stronger.
Awesome, man. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's like the best way? Is it through Instagram? What's the handles? What's
Yes.
all that stuff?
So depending on the demographic, so Facebook, I'm there. Rodrigo Parada. On Instagram, it's Rodrigo_ad Astra. And I'm also on LinkedIn if that's your thing. But yeah, just reach out. I always answer back. Like I said, I'm here to provide support, resources as much as I can. And yeah, just reach out. That's it.
Awesome, man. Dude, Rodrigo, it was a fucking pleasure. It's been a while since we sat down and really had a conversation, but I learned so much. Fucking breakdancer. Poker. I forgot about the poker player.
Yeah.
Running film school. Richie Valens, you're a big fan, I could see. I had a great time, man, and I'm really happy you came by, and I'm looking forward to the next drink together, man.
Thank you for the opportunity, man.
That's it.
Thanks, man.
There you go.
Thanks, man.
That was fucking awesome, man.
This was great. You're really good at this.
Keep going. I'm gonna let the camera roll. Hey, thanks for checking out the show. It's been awesome working on this project. And if you like it, tell a friend. And if you want to support the show, you can by 1, subscribing and liking our YouTube channel at the DMW Podcast. 2, you can go to our website and sign up to our mailing list at the dmwpodcast.com. And 3, you can follow us on Instagram at the DMW Podcast. Thanks again for all of your support. My name is Stef, and this is the Dead Man Walking Podcast.